The following is an interview with Leah Lifshutz. The interview is taking place on November 23, 1973 in San Antonio, Texas. The interviewer is Ellen Robinson Epstein of the Center for Oral History in Washington, D.C. Okay. For the record, could you just state your full name?
My Jewish name, Leah Penna.
And you're married?
Leah Penna, Lifshutz.
And when were you born?
1900.
And where were you born?
In Semyatic, Poland.
And what were your parents' names?
Morris and Hindi.
And do you know what your mother's maiden name was?
Bundy.
Can you spell that?
I would spell it B-O-N-D-Y or N-D-I, would you? Bundy.
And how many brothers and sisters did you have?
3 brothers and 2 sisters.
And what were their names?
Nellie, Ellen, Ben, Max, and Sam.
Okay. Well, you were growing up in
Semyatic.
And what was the size of the town?
I really don't know.
Well,
It was a small town.
What was it near? What was the next big town?
It was near overnight to Warsaw and Białystok. That's all I can tell you.
Do you know how many Jewish families there were there? Approximately?
We had 3 schools, so must have been quite a size.
Were most of your friends Jewish?
Yeah.
And did you go to the regular Polish school?
No, I went to Hebrew school and I went to a Polish school, pre-gymnasia they called it in there, And I went to Hebrew school, to Hebrew teacher.
Did your brothers go to the regular school too?
All my brothers went to the regular school and they were all bar mitzvah.
Was it very common for girls to get a Hebrew education?
Well, my mama sent me and I went.
And all your sisters went with you?
Yeah. Except my older sister, she was too big already.
And how many
She went to Hebrew school, to our teacher, not for my time.
How many years did you go to Hebrew school? I mean, did they have anything like today's bat mitzvah or confirmation?
No. We didn't have bat mitzvah or confirmation. Girl went to Cheder, to Hebrew school, and imagine when you got in high school, you quit Hebrew school, or you went to work.
What did you study at Hebrew school? You didn't study Mishnah and Gemara, did you?
No.
Only the boys studied that.
Yes, just studied to read and write, and just like the girls go to school here,
And in the regular school, what kind of things did you study?
Polish. And when the Poles left and the Russians came in, we had to study Russian. And then when the Russians left and the Germans came in, we had German school. So much education I don't have, put it that way, because from one language to the other.
Well, did they also teach you history or
a little
literature? Did you read any literature?
Very little.
Mostly languages?
Mostly languages.
And did you go to school all day the way children do today?
Till about noon, I think. It's hard to remember.
And
till noon.
And then you went to Cheder afterwards?
And then we went to Cheder.
And what would happen in the evening when you'd come home on just a typical day?
Typical day, come home and we had dinner.
Did you help your mother make dinner?
Always.
What kind of things did you used to fix for dinner then?
Well, sometimes she would have potatoes, sometimes rice, with soup, and we would all sit down at the table. She had a lamp. I've seen it somewhere around here. My mama was very advanced. She didn't like to live the way they all lived. When we sit down for dinner, she had to put a tablecloth and set the table, and she had a lamp that hung on kerosene lamp, but you could pull it down. And she would pull it down so the table was all laid up and everything looked so pretty. And we would all sit down and have whatever, borscht or soup or rich family.
But you all would all eat dinner with your mother and father together?
Yeah. But then my father came to this country. So it was difficult for Mama to raise 6 children. And everything went different already. She was depressed, to raise 3 boys wasn't easy in those days. They would run like wild. And you don't respect the mama. A boy don't respect the mama. Put it that way. When there's no father, he thinks he's the boss.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. I want to just find out a little bit more, if you remember some more about Semyonich. Did they have trams or do you remember a railroad station? Was it a big town like that? If you wanted to go to Warsaw, how did you go?
By train. Yeah, we had trains then, yeah. I can't recall.
Were the streets have paved?
Cobblestone.
And did people have horse and carts in the streets all the time?
Oh yeah.
What did most people do? Did they have was it a farming community or?
Well, no, it was tailors and shoemakers and what do you call it? Smith. Oh, they fix wagons.
A smithy?
They work on iron.
A smithy.
That's right. And barbers.
What did your father do?
My father had a leather store.
Leather?
He would sell leather to the shoemakers.
And who did he buy the leather from?
It came from Bialystok, from a big city.
Did he have to go get it, or did the man come to?
They would bring it in, yeah. Because you couldn't, we didn't have, they didn't make the leather there. They would sell their hide out of town. And they would produce, process it, something. That's right, yeah.
And then he'd sell it to the shoemaker?
That's right. And he had nails and all that gold that he made, and shoes. We didn't buy shoes. A shoemaker made shoes. He came to the shoemaker and he took a measurement of your foot and he made your shoes. He gave you leather to pick the color that you want or whatever. We had groceries. One I recall, I always would go by and look and wonder who can afford to buy them. It was a great big, not a great big, but it was a very fine, something like, what do you call the good candy in New York? The good chocolate candy that they... Isn't it a loft in New York that they have the finest things? And we never saw an orange or a lemon. Orange and lemon would come in from Warsaw. And he had all this in the window. And I remember my mama had a sister in Warsaw. And they would send us in. If somebody was sick, they would send in oranges and lemon. That was sort of your sick gift. And then we had nice stores like, we couldn't buy dresses. You bought the material And they made it for you. A dressmaker made it. I wish I'd get one good in here too. A dressmaker. I say, I wish I could get a good dressmaker in here. And that's about all.
Well, for instance, how many pair of shoes would you get a year?
2.
One
for
for every day?
Pesach and one for Rosh Hashanah.
And the same with dresses?
Dresses? I don't know. I think so. Imagine if some occasion came up, we got another dress.
Do you have any idea how much a dress cost in those days? Or a pair of shoes?
No. It didn't bother me. I didn't have to pay for it. And, well, that's about all. We had one shoe and 2 besmedrish.
What is that?
It's also a shoe, but the shoe wasn't open every day. The shoe was only for Friday night and for holidays. But every day that people, you heard of old people sit in shul and they daven, and my grandpa died, he was 98 years old. And he would go to Besmedrish and sit, and there were a lot of people. You heard of students, rabbis. If they wanted to become a rabbi, the parents didn't finance them. You know that, don't you? So they would they would come into my mama and say, not my mama, but I mean to everybody, and say, Hindi, could you give a boy a day food? Because he would be in the Bishmedrish and pray and shake and pray, and that was his profession. After that, he'd become a rabbi or a meshilach. You know what a meshilach is? Something like this. But the shul was a very beautiful thing. And that was only open Friday night and Saturday and holidays. But all week they would be sitting in the Besmedrish.
How do you translate Besmedrish? Can you think of an English word for it?
No. I don't know. How would you?
I mean,
it's a house of God. You pray there.
Did it look like a shul, except not being
definite. Oh, definite.
They had a bima and a Torah.
They had a bima and a big Torah and the lighting and everything. And I remember when they're Purim, you know, when they'd go with you know what I mean, don't you? Children carry a flag.
Oh, yeah.
And on top was Mama would put on an apple and scoop it out and put a candle. And I was a devil. So there was one girl, I didn't like her. So I didn't say nothing. All I did, I took the flag and I got close to hers. I'll never forget it. I feel so bad now.
What did your mother say when she found out?
Nothing. What did she say? They didn't know that I did it. They thought it was a accident. She got close to me. See, we would follow when they go with the secretaries. They do it in here. Mm-hmm. The children follow. And it's a house of God, you know. You can pray in there.
Was every community like this where they had a separate shul and a separate...
Oh, yeah. Most smaller ones. Like in Warsaw, where my aunt lived, they had big shuls, you know, it was a big city. But we were in a small community. I don't know how big it was. It's seems so many years.
So, let me just get back to the main street in the community there. When this one shop where they had the oranges and the lemons.
And candy and all the finest things.
You never saw anyone go in the shop?
Oh, yes. If somebody got sick, Mama went to buy stuff.
But other than that, it was too expensive?
Too luxurious, you know. It was a luxury to go in there. You had to spend a lot of money. But if a child was sick and asked for something, then it was different. Then was no price too high.
Were any of the shopkeepers on the street Jewish, or were they mostly Polish?
Most Jewish.
Most Jewish?
Most, all our stores. It would be a grocery store where you'd find barley and flour, and just like your little grocer. I'm not talking about the supermarkets. And they were most Jewish. And you'd buy kerosene for your lamps because we didn't have electricity. And
Did your family keep kosher?
Oh yeah.
And did you ever have meat?
Sure, we had butchers. We had several butchers. They called it a butcher shop.
But it was a kosher butcher shop. They
Kosher
had their own
butcher-
mashkia there, and
Oh yes. Oh, there was a shochet. And they would go to the slaughterhouse. And Thursday Mama was very busy. She had to go buy flour and yeast and buy meat for Shabbos. And she worked all day Thursday. And Friday morning was the best day of our life. We'd get up and it was smelling so good. Mama was already up baking the bread and the challah. And she would have a little goodie for every one of us, whatever we liked. Anybody liked with onions, she would fix a little thing with onions of it. So that was our breakfast, and we lived from week to week to have these special.
So what happened on Friday after you coming from school? You'd come home, and what would you do?
We would get ourselves ready for Shabbos.
Did everyone wash up?
Wash up,
Did you have a
clean
special
up,
dress for Shabbat?
put on a different dress, sure, and not a pair of shoes or shiny shoes, something. Sure, and at night, the house would be lit up and a white tablecloth and the candles on candlesticks and candles on the table. Mama had 2 beautiful silver candles, candlesticks. That's about all.
Did you sing songs, Shabbat songs with your family, or would your father go to shul and come home and then?
When Papa was on, was different. So he would make kiddush, and my father was a very learned man. He was in shul. When they read after, he was the one. Because he went to the yeshiva when he was young. And he would read after. He was the only one in the city. He would go from one place if they needed one. He didn't get paid, but he did it because he liked it. And he had the knack for it.
Where was your father from?
My father was from Czechoslovakia.
And that was in Poland?
Yes, that was about 20 miles, I don't know.
And what about your mother?
My mother is from Smiatic.
Do you know how they met?
It was from a shatrin. You know what a shatrin?
I have one too.
Oh, you had a shatrin? I always thought that you weren't Jewish.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh.
You are Jewish. Because your mother was very afraid that being away, you may marry a non-Jewish. My mother, she was so Malke, let me figure out. So Malke, Sime, Neshe, and so Malke, Neshe, Sime, Mama. There were 4 girls.
What were their names?
And 4 boys. Mama's side.
What were their names?
So Malke, Sime, Neshe, and Mama, Indy. And she gave my grandfather a lot of trouble. Because all the rest of them, he brought a boy and he says, you are going to marry him. And they did as he said. But when it came to her, he brought a boy, and the boy right away brought her a gift, with the shadchan. They go out in the park for a walk, and she goes with her father, I think. And the shadchan comes with a boy. And then they met. Each one went their way, and they were left by themselves. And they walked. And he fell out the way. Your mama was a very beautiful woman. And he fell out of her heels. And he right away gives her a gift, a Bible, Sida. She says, I'm not going to marry him anyway. So she comes on and she goes to her girlfriend and she says, look, what can I do? I'm not going to marry him and I don't want his present. She says, and I can't do it from home. They're going to kill me. So she says, I'll take care of it. So she took the book and put a note in it and said, I don't want you. There's something. I don't know.
Your mother's friend put the note in it. Is that right?
Mama made the note, gave the note to her, and she took care of it because she couldn't do it from the house. Mm-hmm. When she saw Papa, she said, this is it. And my grandma, Mama always told us, so when she saw him, so his mama said, I spent so much money on you. I mean, you have to give him clothes, something. None of them were rich. She says, and here you're taking a girl without nothing. See, my grandpa was well off.
This is your mother's father.
Mm-hmm.
What was his name?
Avram Bundy.
And your mother's name was what?
Mama was Indy.
No, your grandmother's
my
name.
grandma Ellen. Your name, Elke. And she says, here you take, and by the time Mama got ready to get married, they had a fire and they lost everything. So you couldn't give him nothing. She says, here you're taking a girl without anything. You'll have to buy her even a first dress. He says, Mama, I love her. And they got married. And they moved to his place, where Papa lived in Chechanovtz. And that's something I don't think the children know. They got married, I think it was on Purim time. And when she came there, she didn't know anybody. She just knew her husband and his family. But the Pesach, Bobby's sister or something gave a party for the newlyweds. So she had all kind of goodies there. And Mama came there and she was just dying to eat everything, but she was embarrassed. She was ashamed, not embarrassed, but ashamed. Here she was all alone. All she knew was her husband. Bunch of strangers. So she didn't touch anything. So the aunt comes up and says, Hindi, why don't you take something? Take it, it's so good. No, thank you. She says, es, we darf nach Hause werfen. You understand?
No.
Eat. Everything we have to throw it out if you don't eat. So then she really wouldn't eat it. She says, so she gave me stuff that she has to throw out. You know the Jewish saying, es, we darf nach Hause werfen. So she told us that story, She said that I wouldn't touch. She says, Leah, what a fool I was. She said, I made a fool of myself. Years later when she told us that. And so they lived in there. And then business didn't go too good.
What kind of business was it?
Same thing. So they came in to Semyatic.
Was that a bigger town?
Not bigger, but it was Mama's folks. And they thought that by maybe in there you'll do better. But I skipped myself. Grandpa didn't have any money for nothing anymore. So he gave him a note that when he left, he still had a little property. In other words, if he dies, he's going to get it. So when business didn't go good, so Papa said to Mama, I need money. Why don't your father pay me? After all, he signed. I'm going to ask him. She says, if you ask Papa for money, you better leave and don't come back. She says, I want no part of you. Because if my father were dead, he would give you. And she says, if you want to stay married to me, you destroy the note. So he ran and told her, because it was, I don't remember, but Mama kept on, pointing when she told us this. She also told us, you see this here woman? She wasn't like me. Our husband dragged our father to court because he demanded, he signed a note. But she says, I wouldn't do it to my parents. So all, comes back to you, and she told me, God, that many years.
Do you remember your grandparents?
Oh.
Did you just go visit them?
Very, very well. We lived with mamas in the same city. And I remember an incident. It's not an incident. We went to bed, and I must have been a very young child. It wasn't like this complex. So we lived in one, and the grandparents lived right across the hall. I got up in the morning, and Mama's not there. You used to be, you get up, I wasn't even in school yet. And I called Mama's not there, so I'll go in to Grandma, probably there. I come in, and I see Grandma is on the floor, and candles on both sides. You know what it is? I didn't know nothing, so I went back in the house. They told me, shh, go out. So I went back in our house, and I picked up a piece of bread or a bagel or something, and I come back and stayed right by there, where all the family was surrounding the body, and I ate. You can imagine how old I was. So somebody told me, Leah, please go out. You don't need here. Well, I couldn't figure out why couldn't I finish my food right there. So I knew him real well, and then my other grandma, Papa's is
what were their names?
Grandma's name was Minnie, and Grandpa's name was blank. I didn't know him. He died, I never heard, he died after they got married something.
And was their name Penner?
No, Penner, yeah.
What kind of name was that?
The name was Penchash.
How do you spell that? No.
But they changed it to Penner when they came here. And I'll never forget the goodies my grandma used to give me. Mama would bring me to the, that little garage, the traveling, where they travel by horse and not buggy, car, truck, something. And she'd say, take her down and don't leave her out until they'll come and pick her up. So I would go with him, and then Grandma or my uncle is still alive. He would wait for me and take me down to Bubby's. And in there they had everything from soup to nuts ready for me. And they couldn't give me enough. And when I left, she would give me a little underskirt for my sister and a doll for the other one. And for the boys, I would always come on loaded. And I loved to go there because that uncle of mine, the one that's still alive, I saw him this summer. I went to see my sister and the rest of the family.
Where are they?
In Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And he spent every penny he had, he used to spend on me, buy me candy, buy me ice cream, and take me to the fair, and take me to the river. It was so good that I always wanted to go there.
How many times a year would you go?
But during the summer, about once or twice, something. But every time I'd come home, I'd bring, the whole family, the children would stay, and I'd give them Bubby says for you, and for you, and for you. And it was a picnic to go there.
But you go by yourself in this car, horse and cart?
Yeah, oh yeah.
How long did it take? I mean, it didn't take overnight?
Overnight.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because Mama knew the people. See, she wouldn't put a child on a car, it was a Jewish man. He commuted that, but he made his living. He commuted from Semyatich to Chechanovce. Go and come back. And that was his way of making a living. And he had a stall right by his house where he kept his horse and wagon, not a truck, a wagon. And that's the way we traveled.
How old were you when you used to do that?
Oh, I don't remember. I was very, very little. Very young. Littler now, but young. I was very young because I remember things so vaguely. But my uncle, I was born in 1900. And I was a little girl. And my uncle was already a man to me. So when we saw him this year, my husband says to him, and my husband saw him the first time.
Just this year?
Uh-huh. Because my husband don't like to travel. I mean, he traveled quite a lot, but just to go to family, he always say, go by yourself. So he says, Uncle, when he saw him, he says, Uncle, how old are you? He says, 75. So I told him, it's funny, Jeff, to embarrass him. He's all shriveled up. And when I walked in, I told his housekeeper, see, his wife died, and he has a housekeeper that takes care of him. And so I told when we knocked at the door, the housekeeper says, who is it? I says, and my sister was with me. So I says, don't say nothing, just tell him that Nellie is here. That's my sister's name. I says, I want to surprise him. So she goes in the bedroom, and he comes in with a cane, Leah! I was shocked. I haven't seen him I was there to a funeral about 15 years ago or something, but he recognized me. Isn't it amazing?
Why did you tell him that it was Nellie? Why did you tell the housekeeper?
Well, my sister was with me.
She was with you?
Yeah. I wanted
I
wanted to see if he recognizes me. So my husband says, Uncle, how old are you? I says, well, how did you have to do it? So,
this was your mother's brother?
No.
Your father's
brother.
And what was his name? What's his name?
What's his name? Gosh, my name. Simon Penner. Mm-hmm. The only one left. For mamas, there is nobody. There's a lot of cousins and nieces and nephews of mama, but we're not in contact.
Okay, well, back to Semyatich. When you were growing up there, you said almost everybody was Jewish, but when you went to the Polish gymnasium,
Mm-hmm.
there were non-Jewish students there also?
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Did you ever have any incidents where they...
Definite.
What did they do?
Jit. Żydowska chara, that's Polish. It's the Jewish religion is like how behind. That's the way they talk to us.
It's like what?
Like they're behind.
I see.
And Saturday, if we'd go for a walk, we'd go in the Goyish street, and we knew we were going to get thrown rocks. A girl wouldn't dare go by herself there. They always go several. And we heard, they were bad.
What about, were you afraid to just walk home from school in the afternoons ever?
No, we didn't, the main city, the main town was Jewish. The gentry lived away. See, like they used to call it, well, let's say on the highway. See, because Jewish people don't raise cattle or chickens or nothing. See, and they had to have more space, so they would live out on the highway. And I never had any bad feelings with them. I mean, I don't know how the feelings was, but they didn't bother me. I used to keep away. I believe if you're not wanted, don't go. Stay away.
What about a Pesach? Was there ever any trouble?
It was, Mama used to tell us that for her time. But I remember that Pesach Mama would close all the curtains. Everything would be closed, that they shouldn't see what's going on. I mean, that was the saying. Whether they gave trouble or not, I don't know. See, we were in Polish part, not in worship. And Christmas Eve, we would try not to be out in the street, stay inside. For Christmas Eve, we were delighted to stay inside. It was cold.
Did you ever hear about a pogrom, or did your mother? You never experienced it?
No.
Did your mother ever tell you when she was growing up?
No, because that only happened in Russia. Poland didn't have pogroms. We just.
So the Polish government was not bad to the Jews?
No,
the Russians?
No, they didn't. They didn't give us trouble. I wasn't old enough to know, but I remember that they would have, I don't know how you would call it, a yerit. Have you heard of that? A market. Sunday, people would come out with a merchandise. A shoemaker would bring out the shoes, the candies. They would put out a table like this and have candy. And the farmers would come to buy things. And Thursday, they would have a market. The farmers would bring out chickens and eggs. So I remember Mama would go to the market and buy chicken for Shabbos. And my husband, we always talk about it. My mama was a very beautiful woman, and so was my father, you can see. And she went to buy a neighbor told her, Indy, when you go to buy the chicken, go to that farmer, his chickens is better and it's cheaper. So you bought him alive. So she went. When she come down and she looked at the farmer, she says, I wouldn't eat this chicken if I wouldn't eat the rest of my life. He had, the nose was, here, I don't know. I never find out what must be some disease that it was just eating up, And he looked so ugly that she says, I wouldn't eat the chicken if I don't eat the rest of my life. So my husband, on our day, when I see something, I said, oof, I hate it. He says, why? You don't like his face? He says, you like your mama with the chicken. And that's about all, I think.
But when you bought the chicken, then you'd have to take
She
it
had
to
to
the
take it to the
kosher.
shochet.
Yeah.
And the shochet killed it. Then we would plug the feathers. Well, we did it in here too. Didn't your mother tell you? Oh, we did it in here too. We used to take, if you keep now it's different. But when I kept kosher, my husband didn't care. But my parents, my mother told my husband, you like my daughter? Fine. But she has to keep kosher. He says, well, I'm not in the kitchen. She can keep anything any way she wants. So I kept kosher. We had to go to the market, buy the chicken, then take it to the shochet, and we'd kill it, and we'd bring it on and plug it. But I think your mother-in-law is married. How long would she have been married? How old is Bill?
40.
Oh, well, we are married 52. Then when she came, things were different already. You could come and buy a chicken, and it was delivered to you. You know, the butcher would deliver it. Now, of course, you know, she still keeps kosher. But you go to the place and they bring it in just like the way you don't keep kosher. You do. Does your husband demands it? That's a job.
Not so bad.
I bet you didn't keep your parents don't. Well, it's not too hard. I mean, listen, while she is still alive, do it.
I do it for myself now.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. I did it, and I was proud that my husband didn't rebel, because he still eats ham and bacon and everything. I've never in my life touched it, because I was brought up in a kosher home, and I never saw ham. Ham belonged to a God, and the children, when they grew up, the doctor would say, you know, give them bacon for breakfast. I told the doctor, fine, all right, but I didn't. I said, I grew up without a baby. And now it's easier, much easier. You buy everything, it's kosher. You don't have to salt the meat. You see, with us, we had to salt the meat and take it to the butcher and bring it back. First, we had to go to the market and buy it. And then, you know, now you put the dishes in the dishwasher. It's a different thing. Would you believe that my son would go to the drawer and see a milk spoon and, Mama, look what she did. And look what he got. The way I raised him, your mother-in-law is lucky. Knock on wood. He was raised very strict. But when my folks passed away, I said, deep in my heart, I'm not. And we sold our home. And we moved to an apartment. So where am I going to drag all these dishes? The rest I stored. And I took in just one set. And I says, I'll be a hypocrite. I'm not going to throw out the dishes. So I'm going to go back to the kosher. And what am I going to do with this? I just went wild, that's all.
Okay.
My father, you know the pennies, the stores in town, tots and pennies. He started from nothing, a little bit of a second-hand store. They were open Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night till 11 o'clock, 12 at night. And Sunday morning they opened again. But look how they worked up. So when he was a little bitty man, and he went to St. Louis to buy second-hand clothes. That's how he started. And he bought the second-hand clothes and to resell, you know, clean it and resell it. But nevertheless, even second-hand clothes, there are merchants. And he dealt with a big company. And of course, who sells merchandise like these Jews? So when the people would come to San Antonio, and I had my husband, I've never had a one the day I married my husband. He was in business and he had money, and he's a good everybody likes him, and he's done very well. I don't have to tell you. Send my son. I was thinking the other day, maybe we're not putting this on because she'll hear it. I sent him to school. I was responsible for him going to Wharton. I says, you have a scholarship. That means that you are good, which I knew before if he was valedictorian. You know, he was valedictorian. He was valedictorian in TMI, and he was never an officer. Because not being an officer, you can be a valedictorian. But he didn't like the, what do you call it, the school that he went. What do you call it, TMI? Texas military. He didn't like a military man, but he liked the school. So he never went higher than a private. The last day they made him a sergeant because they couldn't have a private to be valedictorian. So I says, why don't you send off to other schools? And he was accepted there. And if I wouldn't, so this cannot be talked. And what was I talking? Yeah, so my father, when they would come to San Antonio, his people, you know, business people, he'd say, Leah, Mr. Goldstein or Goldberg or somebody is coming to San Antonio, and would you have him for lunch? They are kosher. I says, all right, Papa, I'll have lunch. And they would come in my house, and that gave my father so much pleasure that he could bring his people to my home for lunch or dinner. Mm-hmm. So I never regretted to keep kosher.
But your mother kept kosher here.
Oh yeah, obviously. Oh yeah. Until, if she would still be alive, I'd still keep kosher. Now my daughter, I told, you don't have to, you do the way you want to. For me, you don't have to do nothing. Because down deep in my heart, I mean, I'm like your mother. If you are good, that's all. That's all it counts. And my husband didn't rebel. You know, he wasn't against. He said, you want to keep kosher, keep kosher. So that's why, you know, you're doing well.
Okay, I want to get back to Semyonich a little bit more.
Yeah.
You had 3 shuls in the town, you said?
1 shul and 2, would you call it, smederish, I don't know. You got to ask your husband, he could tell you more.
And how many rabbis were there?
I don't know. I think 1 rabbi. No, I couldn't be 1 rabbi to a shul. Don't remember. You want me to find out?
No.
Huh? I can call my brother.
No.
No, all right.
But was everybody made a big deal about the rabbi? Was he? Did you see Fiddler on the Roof?
Yeah.
Was it like that, the way they talked about the Rebbe, and it was you'd go to the Rebbe if you had some problem?
Right. If you wanted a divorce, the Rebbe made a divorce. And if you cooked meat in here, and in here you cooked milk, and the milk overboiled, and the pot got a drop of milk, you came to the rabbi, and he says, bring me the pot. And to see how far, if it went in, then it was treif. But if you just touch the pot, you wash it up, and it's kosher. And I used to go every Monday and Donnerstag. My mama would send me to ask because something happened. They took a milk spoon and for the fleishike. After all, we were 6 of us. And we all various ages, 2 years apart. And if the little ones would do something, So she would send to the rabbi to find out if it's kosher or not. And if business, if you couldn't get the two partners, you'd go to the rabbi, to the Rav. And that's it.
What would he do? He'd find you.
He would kind of, well, he would talk to you and see who is right.
Oh, you mean if you were having a dispute?
Yeah.
And he would.
Like two partners couldn't get along. You know, you'd say, well, I work more, I should get more or less. Or if, like I say, like when my father got a note and he never got paid. So the ones that wasn't like my father, you would come to the rabbi and say, and the rabbi would send a man to bring the father-in-law. And they would have adultery, how they call it. Anyway, they would you would straighten out. They would ask him, do you need the money? And do you have the money? Just like a judge.
Did many people get divorces? Or was it very rare?
Very rare. Very rare. But the rabbi was the main thing. He was the head of the community, the Jewish community.
And on any other holidays, you described Purim and what you used to do. Do you remember Simchas Torah? Or?
Well, that's Simchas Torah. We would go, with the flags, the same thing. And Shavuos, we would have greenery. The shul was covered. And Mama would have in the windows put in greenery and and sikkahs. We would all eat in the sikkah.
At the shul?
No.
You had your own?
Mama would always have a sukkah. They had a little porch, so they would build it up. And we would look forward, and all the neighbors, the close that lived in the same complex would eat in the sukkah.
And what kind of your house? What did it look like? There was 8 of you living there, 6 children and 2 adults. How many did you sleep with your sisters?
That's right.
All in the same bed?
The girls slept together, and the boys slept together.
And did you have to go outside to use
Absolutely.
the toilet?
Yeah, outside. And we had to carry water from a well.
And what kind of heating did you have?
We would have, it was something like a big wall, but it was in between that it would warm up the whole house. See, it wasn't in a side, it was in the middle of the house. And wood. And for Shabbos, Friday, Mama would put in top of in the bottom she would put wood. And on top was an iron plate like another door. So she would put there food. And then she would leave a tea kettle all night on a little burner. And summer was a pleasure. She had a basement. It was ice cold, just like in the freezer. And she would have fish there and borscht and what have you. And we would eat cold food summer.
Did it get very hot in the summer?
Yes.
And so you had 3 rooms in the house? Your parents had a room and then your sisters and you and your brothers?
No, we had more than 3 rooms. We had a living room. Very fancy, Mama had it. She had the oven that warmed up the house was white tile. I can see it now, it was so pretty. My mama was a very dressy woman. And she had a kitchen in the living room. And a couple of rooms.
What kind of furniture did people have? I mean...
Like here.
It's made out of wood, though?
Yeah, everything of wood. The beds were made out of wood. This is a bed. But my mama had 2 like this, but it wasn't upholstered.
What did it have on it?
It was wood, all wood. and it would open out. And there, too, was very comfortable to sleep. See, she was a very dressy. She didn't like cluttered. So everything, she didn't want, if you have a bed, then it's open. Don't you see? And at daytime it would be closed, and you could sit on it. It was as hard as a rock. This was the top.
You didn't have a mattress?
No, we did that, but once it was closed,
I see.
you see, you took off the top, and you stand it against the wall. And then in the morning, you shoved in and put the top over it, and it was a bench. No, we had mattress from store. It wasn't mattresses like here.
And you had to buy those, or did...
They made it, I think. I don't think there was anything like this to buy. I don't remember.
Did you used to make the blankets? Did you learn how to knit, or did your mother knit or crochet?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I did.
Did your mother teach you how to sew? And cook?
My mother, to cook, she taught us.
Did you used to make noodles?
Yeah, I can still make you good noodles. And farfel. You know,
Sure.
No, Mama didn't teach us how to. My sister knew to sew. She went to a dressmaker and learned how to sew.
What did people, when you were growing up, what did your mother think you would do? Did she think you would just get married, or did she think you would learn how to be a seamstress? Did they think that girls would get, not really jobs, but have some sort of thing they could do?
Yes. My mama believed in it. But with me, she didn't. I think she liked me to help her.
To be what? To help?
To help her.
And what about your brothers? Did they prepare to go into a trade or the business?
No, because they went in, we came here, we were all young.
But I mean, for other people, did they train their children, the other Jewish families, did they want their children to become rabbis, or did they
That's
think
right, they went to yeshiva, some children went. Some boys went to yeshiva, some became rabbis. Some became shoemakers, some became smiths. No, what do you call it?
Blacksmith?
Blacksmith. I know it's something. And others became, some were business, they would buy grain, like my husband, his family, were in grain business. And some became tailors. Some became, barbers.
Did any of the families want to send their children to the university at Warsaw?
Oh yes.
Did you know some people who children went?
Oh yes. We had very rich people, and their children went to the university. Yeah. Now my brother, the one that's dead, he went to the yeshiva. But then the war broke out, and Mama was afraid that another year and they'll call him, so she sent him to Papa. And my father was here. We didn't hear from him. He didn't hear from us. That was during the war, the First World War. And it was very hard because Mama did have money. See, my father knew that my mama likes money. Not likes, but she knows what to do with it. So he sent her as much as he could. And she made investments, but when the war broke out, she lost it all.
Well, wait, when did your father decide that he had to leave Poland to come to America? Do you remember the discussions at home, that maybe he should go?
You don't hear discussions in Europe. The discussions is in bedroom. When the children, I remember when my father was sick one time, and Mama had to do something for him, so she told us all to go out, and she locked the door from inside. We didn't know what it was all about. She had to Papa had Bright's disease, and he had to check his urine all the time. And they had something that they boil it on something, I don't know. And if anything like this would be done, they were very shy. So go out to play. So I was ready to come in, knock at the door, and a child, you knock him just because they don't answer, you knock more. And then we, kind of figured out that, so evidently that he didn't do well, and the family was growing. And with school, 4 or 5 children in school, so he decided to come to this country.
How old were you when he left?
The first time I was very young. He came once, and my mama refused to come here.
Why was that?
Because my father wrote, he says, the ground that you walk on is treif. He says it's a good place to make money, but I don't want to raise my family here. Even the ground is treif. Because he went, when he was here, in New York, came Pesach, he didn't know anybody, and he wanted to be at a Seder. So he was talking about people, evidently neighbors, and they told him that a Seder, every restaurant has a Seder. So he went to shop around. At night, he would go by and check on the restaurants. And he thought that this one, he'll come in and have with him a Seder. And the first night, he comes in and he sees that there is bread and matzah. That was it. So the poor man never had a Seder, he went on, and he had, to himself, because he was very religious. And he cooked for himself because he wouldn't eat anywhere, because he was very religious, very kosher. So he says, even the stones in here is treif. And when Mama heard that, she didn't want to raise her children. But when the war broke out, and we were 6, and we didn't hear from Papa. Papa didn't hear from us. And the money was almost gone. So it was very sad. So Mama decided that now she'll go anywhere. So she sent, during the war, my older sister and my older brother, he's not older, he was younger than me, the first of the boys, came over here. They were 6 weeks in a ship.
By themselves?
By themselves. And when they came to Kansas City, my father was in Kansas City at that time. He wasn't there. And they thought that he's dead. But lucky, he had brothers in there. So the brothers accepted the children. And they told him that Papa is alive and he's in San Antonio. He had asthma and Bright's disease. That's a good combination. So the doctor told him, he says, Mr. Penner, if you want to leave Kansas City. He says, but I have a family and I have to give up. He had established business. He says, the business you'll never have, because you'll die before your business. So he picked himself up and he came to San Antonio.
But was this after the first trip or the second trip?
For the second trip.
The first trip he went to New York and he lived there by himself. What was he doing in New York?
He had a little shop. I don't know, maybe not a, what do you call it? That they stay outside.
A stall?
A stall, no, not that. He had a little shop, something that pertains to leather. In East Line, that's all he knew. In a basement, And so when his brothers, he had 3 brothers living in Kansas City. So they insisted he should come and be with them. So he was there, and he opened up a store, and he did very good.
One thing I don't understand, he went back to Poland after New York first? Or he went from New York to Kansas City?
No, from New York he came to Poland.
Well, and he came home because the country was too trade?
That's right. He wouldn't bring the family. In the meantime...
How many years was he
When he left, we were 5. And when he came back, and when he left again, we were 6. So he came back to New York because he knew New York. And when he came to New York, his brothers wrote him and said, why should you be there by yourself? We are here. Come and we'll all be together. And their wives were all still in Europe. So he opened up a store and he did very well. And then when the doctor told him, either you leave or you die. So he came to San Antonio.
But how did his brothers get to Kansas City? Do you know that?
Probably by some landsman told him Kansas City is a good, better city, something.
And did he have a leather shop there also?
No, he had a store like here, a second-hand store.
And then he would send money to your mother so she could make investments?
Yeah.
So was it very hard? Was it harder with your father in this country? Or because there was no father there, but even though he was sending money, was that better than when he was there and he wasn't doing so well?
Well, with us, we didn't know from nothing. As long as we had food and shelter, we had mama.
But was it easier since
It
your
was
father was
easier
making
for
a little
mama.
more money?
Oh, yeah, it was easier for mama because they had a house. She bought a house and paid it. And then the money that he sent, he knew that she loves to, so he sent all the money. And you see, when you send $1, it was 2. Not dollar is nothing, take the prayer to Nixon. So she invested all the money. She got a mortgage here, a mortgage there, but it went to nothing because the war.
Well, what happened with your brothers? Were they, you said it was difficult not having a father around.
It was very hard for a woman to raise 3 boys.
And you didn't have any relatives?
Yes, but my grandpa was an old man, you see, and then he died. And Mama had a brother, he had his own family there. So it was very difficult for Mama to raise, but she managed. She had a way. If they did something that they had to be punished, she could never catch him. So she got smart, and she would get up early in the morning, and they were still in bed. For this, and for that, and for this, and for that. Each time she would give them a bell she called out for the punishment. And it lasted for a while. And then after they forgot, and they did it again. It's hard for a woman to raise 3 boys. I mean, the girls is not easy neither, but the girls is, they're closer, and they don't run into their moment.
So when the war broke out, your mother decided that she had to send, who was it, Nellie and Ben?
Nellie and Ben.
And
they went off, and they came here, and my Ben came immediately to be with Papa. So he came here. But in the meantime, my sister was a very beautiful girl, just beautiful. And so she met my uncle at a little gathering for the children to make him, and he invited some of his relatives. And there was a boy that was born in here, and he had a pawn shop. And when he saw her, he fell in love with her, and that was it. So she never left Kansas City. I mean, she came to visit Papa, but she got married, and that was her home.
And when did the rest of you come over?
We came years later. We came here in 19 or 20. I really don't remember.
About how old were you?
I was, figure out. I was born in 19.
So you were 20 years old when you came?
19, 20 years, yes.
And you and your mother And Ellen?
And Max and
Max,
Sam.
And when you first decided to leave, did you take everything with you, or did you sell most of the things?
Mama took most, you heard of copper pens?
Yeah.
That's the treasure. And she had a pair of silver candlesticks, not like San Antonio, not like in this country, it was really silver. And linen, whatever she could. We took it, but on the where you pass over, what do you call it? My mind is all blank. Like when you come from Mexico to here, or from here to Mexico.
The border?
The border. They took away the copper. Everything they confiscated. But the candlesticks, that I don't know how, they didn't see them or something, so that was one thing she salvaged. And she had a scarf on, that she salvaged, and that's about all. Or jewelry and everything she sold before we came here, because we needed money.
You sold the house also?
Oh yeah, sold the house and whatever she could make enough. And when we got to Amsterdam,
how did you get there from Yadich?
We crossed the border. First we came to Warsaw.
I mean, did you go by cart or was there a train?
Train. We came to Warsaw by train, and then from Warsaw we came by train to Amsterdam. And
how long did that take, that trip?
2 days. And when we got there, and we showed them the tickets. See, Papa sent us tickets way before the war broke out, because he decided that the children are getting bigger, and he got a little more Americanized. You realize that you can keep, the grant is not reif, it's if you make it reif. So he sent us tickets. But from the time he sent to the time to come, everyone got older. I had a half. It was 3 halves, and we ought to all have all tickets. No, 4 halves. 4 half tickets. Mama was the only one that had 1 ticket. And we didn't have money. So we ran the office told us where to go. And we came there, it wasn't charity because we didn't get any money. What would you call it?
What exactly did they do for you?
They sent a letter to Papa. They got in contact with Papa.
And you hadn't heard from him for a while because of the war.
No, but in there they got in contact with him and wrote to him or talked to him or something, I don't know, that we need 4 F tickets or we are stuck in there. So I'll never forget, bless his soul, he sent in $450. And we were the richest people on the ship then. So when we left, when we got on the ship, we met a man that he escaped from Warsaw. He was a rider. And he was all by himself. He was very depressed. He left a wife and child. And when he saw us, a family, Mama and 4 children, he kind of stuck to us. He was a young man. He must have been in his early 30s, or maybe not even 30. And all of a sudden, he got very sad. And my mother, my brother says, "What's the matter, Mr. Shatsky? What's the matter?" He says, "I have to have $20 or they're not letting me off the boat." So you had to have that, or else, you'll be a burden on our country. So my mama takes out 20 rubles, or 25, whatever, dollars. We already had dollars. and she gave him because we had money left. And he never forgot us. So when we came to this country, this is good. When we came to this country, we didn't tell anybody. Mama says, don't tell Papa.
That you had given him the money.
Money? So we kept a secret. We didn't say nothing. All the children gave word to Ivana. Pretty soon, we get a letter. The letter didn't come to us because he had the store address. We didn't know where we were going to be. So Papa comes home and he says, I got a letter and a check. He says, what kind of money? So then Mama told him. But wasn't it a nice man? I mean, sometimes you say, well, I got cheated by one. If Mama wouldn't give him the money, he would never get in. And he ran away from, I think he must have been younger than 30, but he ran away from, so he wouldn't be drafted. And he was a rider. For a while we corresponded, and I was in New York years later and called him. And he came to see us. He was just so excited, it was so wonderful. For a while we all corresponded with him, the whole family. So my mama was a very charitable person.
Well, how long did you have to wait in Amsterdam until your father sent the money?
It didn't take no time.
Did you have someplace to stay there?
We stayed in something that belongs to the ship, that they keep the passengers waiting till the ship comes. Mm-hmm. And we left the ship that we were supposed to leave. So evidently the money came right away.
I see.
Because we weren't delayed.
I see.
You see?
Well, your mother finally decided to leave because she was afraid that Max was going to be drafted into the Army?
That's right.
Do you think that was the most important factor in deciding to finally...
Well, and she wanted to be with her husband. Mm-hmm. She wanted... Excuse me, and then she had the two children ready, you see. She was tickled. She couldn't wait to leave any because what she went through during the war, to protect us all. When they were fighting right in our little city. Mm. The Germans and the Polish.
What did you have to do?
What did we have to do? Don't ask. Mama went and put dirt on my face because I was the oldest. She was afraid of soldiers, And my aunt...
What, to try and make you look ugly, you mean?
That's right. And we had, our house was in the center of a very beautiful neighborhood. The chief of police lived in the same neighborhood, so you can imagine, And the doctor lived in the same neighborhood, and the big shoe was in the same neighborhood. I mean, it was the prime. And the house was very pretty. I can see it now with the two balconies. But my aunt was richer than my mama. And she lived in a side street. She also had a very beautiful home. So she dressed me up as an old lady and barefoot, all the children. And she had a bundle, like a poor woman carrying. And we crossed all these streets to come to my aunt. And there we went in the basement. All the shooting went on.
Well, how long was that? I mean, weeks or?
It was days.
Days.
And when we came back, after the Germans left, when we came back to our house, on our porch, we found some ammunition that they were shooting from the house. Mm. So she was very smart.
Was your house damaged at all?
No. It was amazing. Well, it was surrounded. The shul was sort of a covering, and there was a lot of big buildings around there. The house that Mama had was a 2-story. Just like this complex, I always think of it. Not this elaborate.
Well, when the war ended, did the Germans take over Semyadich?
No, the Russian.
The Russians.
Then the Russian came in. See, we were Polish. So then the Russian came in. But
Was there any problem for the Jews then?
for the Jews was always problem. I really think that we were more afraid what will happen. I actually never remember, one thing I do remember, a man went to the country to buy cattle, a butcher, so he could slaughter. You know, they used to slaughter their own. And it was on a narrow street. And what do you call it, a peon, a farmer was coming on the road, and he said to the Jew, "Let me pass." And the Jew said, "No, I got to get in town. I have." And they start to argument, and so he goes and kills it. And they find the body with the cow and everything on the road. But people like us that didn't have any dealings, I don't remember. I think everything was quiet.
But so it was a greater fear of what might happen than what actually did.
That's right. You were just thinking, night when we went to bed, Mama would close every window and nook and tell us not to go here, not to go there. But you lived in fear because you thought that if they had a pogrom in Kishinev, they might have a pogrom here too. But I never remember anything like it. Don't remember that anybody would be killed or something.
So the war ended about 1918, and then you say 1919 or 1920, you finally decided you went to Amsterdam, and you got on the ship. Do you remember the name of the ship?
I remembered it all the time. What was the name of the ship? No, blank.
But it was a Dutch ship.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know why you...
Amsterdam.
The Amsterdam. Do you know why you decided to go from Amsterdam rather than Hamburg?
Because I think that the tickets must have been on that line. Mm-hmm. That's all. Because, one time when we were traveling, years ago, we traveled a lot. I saw a ship and I says, "Oh, we came in that ship." It wasn't that, I guarantee you.
What did the ship look like? Do you remember?
Just like I have with sheep. Have you ever been in a ship? Same thing. Of course, we worn up. We were down.
How many people were on the ship with you about?
Oh, a lot of people.
Was it very crowded?
Well, we were in the basement, put it that way. And when we'd come on deck, we see people on the first class and second class look down upon us. That's the way we do when we travel now. But I don't remember how long we were on there.
You don't remember how long?
No, I think 8 days or 12 days.
Did you have to take your own food and water? Or
No.
The ship, that was part of your fare?
We were sit at tables and feed us.
Oh.
Yeah.
And where did you sleep?
In the basement.
No, but I mean, did they have, was it like bunks?
Bunks. Yeah, bunks. And of course, Mama would watch the girls. She had 2 girls with us. Because there was our thing, So poor Mama went through. And,
Were people sick on the ship? Or was it a bad crossing? Or
oh, yes. A lot of people like that man was so sick. He got kind of close with us. Because Mama took some, they used to take dried out pumpernickel, toasted. I mean, that you take from, on the ship, that was your medication, something. And we kept that man, he was like one in the family. Whatever we ate, we gave him. And if he was sick, Mama doctored him. He was like one in the family. But
there were lots of people who were sick on the ship then.
Oh yeah. But on the first class, they had like we had. When we went on the new United States boat, we were on 53. So I was telling my husband, I says, there's no basement. I said, let's see if they have somebody in there. But there were.
This completes Volume 1, Side 2 of the interview with Leah Penner Lifshutz of San Antonio, Texas. This begins Volume 2 of the interview with Leah Penner Lifshutz of San Antonio, Texas.
Okay, well, after the trip was over, you landed in New York.
Yeah.
And what's the first thing you remember about coming to New York?
We didn't see New York.
Why?
Because as soon as we came to Castle Garden, you heard, for Daddy's.
No.
Well, that's, they used to call it. I mean, in the, what do you call it? It has a different name. Well, the Statue of Liberty. There we landed. And my father had the tickets that we go straight into San Antonio. So we came in and sort of checked out and got a little baggage. And from there, we were put on a train and found ourselves in San Antonio.
Do you remember that trip across country?
Oh boy, was it a trip. The windows were open and all the sods from we were more black than white. And we saw watermelon.
You saw what?
Watermelon.
What is that?
Watermelon.
Watermelon.
And my brother sees a watermelon and he says, oh, Mama, let's get some. We got it only for Rosh Hashanah. In our part, we didn't go there. They used to import it for Rosh Hashanah. So we buy a melon, and he has a little penknife, so he cuts it in. And there's nothing to eat it with, so we ate it. Then we were hungry. We didn't know there was a diner to go and buy food. And we traveled from New York to San Antonio. It takes a couple days and a couple nights. We didn't know that there was a Pullman. We couldn't speak to anybody. Nobody could understand us. And pretty soon we hear how did he say it? Oh, nice fresh ham sandwiches? We didn't know. What is it? It's sandwich. He opens up. See bread? Fine. So it's in a box, packed. So we buy it, and we open up, and the smell from the ham made me dizzy. There was a ham sandwich and an egg, something else. So my brother Max had a picnic. He had it all. And we didn't know how much, so we something, so we gave him money and he helped himself. And he helped himself all right. It's a good thing Papa sent us all the money. And so finally, and then we saw red sand traveling and the windows open. And we came to San Antonio. We landed, station did we land? Papa was there, and my brother was there. Ben.
How many years had it been since you'd seen your father?
Oh my, I didn't even recognize him because when he was home, he had a beard. And you see here, my brother told him, he says, Papa, look, you're not in Europe. You better shave off because you look better and it's cleaner. And this way, the Mexican, they see a man with a beard. They never seen men with beards in here. So he shaved off or cut off. And they took us to a most gorgeous home that my papa bought. It just so happened that a family moved away from San Antonio. And they sold as it is. It was a 2-story, 4 bedrooms upstairs and a bedroom. And I see at night it had window seats. And it had for storage, of course. And downstairs, and a sleeping porch. And downstairs was a hall with curtains, it's strips. They have it now. I see it in the television. And that was the entrance hall. And then was a big kitchen and a living room and a dining room and a back porch. And it was just like in heaven.
Do you remember what street it was on?
Oh, yeah, the house is still there.
Where was it located?
On Russell Place. We went to school. Mama was all by herself. On one side was a doctor, and the other side was a lawyer. She couldn't speak a word. But we would come home from school. We couldn't speak anything. At the street they used to call Providence. Then they changed it to Russell. Well, when we got lost, we couldn't say Providence, so we said Providencia. You asked Providencia, people didn't know where we are. So finally, my mama was very unhappy, and she used to cry. So they would come over and talk to her, but she couldn't understand it. So one night, Papa comes home and he brings magazines. So Mama said, nobody could read it. So Mama says, what did you bring it? He says, I can't read them. He says, you look at the pictures.
Did your father know English then?
Oh, yes. He was here for so many years. You look at the pictures, Annie. And then the children, then I didn't go to school anymore. I was just learned a little. So, yeah, Mama kept on crying, I don't want to leave you. I want to leave among Jews.
Leave him what?
Among Jewish
Among
people.
Jews.
So they moved in, like on the east side, right off East Comer Street. And the house is still there. It was funny, we passed by, my husband bought something, the business they do. And one Sunday, he says, you want to come for a ride with me? I usually go out with him, so I have a ride. See, I don't drive anymore. And he stops at a house. I says, this is the house that we got married in. He says, crazy. I says, honey, I have the invitation. I'll show it to you when we get on. It's 109. This is the house. So we moved in there. And on one side was one family, and the other side was another Jewish family. Across the street, more Jews. And Mama was in heaven. They rented their house for $90 a month.
The other house?
Yeah.
On Russell?
They paid $35 a month. Because the other one was in a better neighborhood. But to go to town, they didn't have cars. You had to go by jitney. You know what a jitney is. Mm-hmm. Then by bus, by streetcar. You see, it was too fancy a neighborhood for a streetcar. So you took a jitney and you came to town. You don't know San Antonio, ask me. And it was a nickel here and a nickel there, But the streetcars didn't come in the residence. So we had to have first a jeepney and then a streetcar to get home. Mama couldn't find candles for Shabbos because it was all goyim. They didn't know from nothing here. Bread we didn't find. The only bread we could eat is the sandwich bread, you know. So it was very hard. Really, it was very hard for my mama. But then finally they sold the house. And they bought a house in another neighborhood, also but in a better neighborhood, you know, little.
Well, when you first lived on Russell Street, how long did you live there?
I don't think we lived there a year.
What did your mother do about buying? There was no.
Papa would bring the bread, and then we had a man that would deliver rice, and a milkman. Those days, a milkman came every day, and an iceman came every day, and the garbage man came every day, and Papa would bring bread and things that the.
Well, what about, was there a kosher butcher here?
Yeah, the butcher would deliver. Yeah, we had a kosher butcher, and he would deliver the meat every morning. Leave it hanging on the door, and the blood would drip down. And
your father was running the dry goods store at the time?
Second-hand store.
Second-hand store,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And were you going to school?
I went to school just for a few months, you know, just to pick up.
Had you already finished school in Poland?
As much as I had, you know, but when I came here, I was too big to go for. And then, you know, it was 3 children for school, see? So I just, as I picked up the language, and it wasn't hard for me because it's just the writing, it's just a little bit different, you know. And I never worked, did I? Oh yeah, I worked a little, just a little bit.
Where did you work?
Then I met, you know, a store. They're selling.
Selling?
Yeah.
But were your brothers and sisters, Sam and Ellen, were they in school?
They were, yes. Sam and Ellen graduate junior high school. And
did you all teach your mother English?
we tried, and she picked up a little. But it was very
Did you
fun.
speak Yiddish or Polish at home?
Yiddish.
And Yiddish when you were in Poland also?
Yeah, also Yiddish, yes. We spoke Yiddish. But it was very hard. It was very hard to. I'm sure that for my mama it was very hard to transplant.
Mm.
You know, she came here and she didn't know anybody. A lawyer and a doctor, it didn't mean anything. We enjoyed it. Now my brother Ben enjoyed, because there was a girl that the judge had, I said lawyer, he was a judge. The judge had a daughter, and she played piano, and my brother played violin. So he had a ball. See?
Was your mother worried that they might have any kind of...
No, she was much older than Ben. She was a school teacher. And he was very good looking, and she liked him to accompany her. He would play the violin, and she would play piano. And they were wonderful to us. They were, didn't know what to do, you know. And talking about kosher, we lived on Gramercy.
After Commerce?
No, we.
Oh,
Me
you
and
were
my
married.
husband, yeah. We lived on Gramercy. We had a very lovely home there. And next door neighbor was a gent, of course. He was mayor at one time in San Antonio, Mayor Kirkendall. So when we first moved in, we were very friendly. At night, the bell rings in the kitchen. I come to the kitchen, and Kirkendall has a wallet sack, and he says, I went hunting. I got squash. That's my God. What can you do? How can you not take it? And if I take it, so right away, I says, Mr. Kirkendall, I'm so sorry, but you know I keep kosher. Oh, how stupid of me to know. I went to school with Jewish boys. And I at Easter one night there, and we were sitting at the table, and they keep kosher. How stupid. I says, thank you very much. Well, my husband thought that I committed the biggest crime. I says, look, honey, honesty is your best policy. He says, you should have thrown it out. I says, then he would bring me some more. And I'd have to find an excuse to tell him that it's good or it's not good. I says, I don't want to go with no lies. We became the best friends. He was mayor, and during the war, when everything was rationed here, Kirkendall would go to the farm, and he would bring me butter. Those days we still used butter. Bring me butter and eggs and fruit, but he knew that meat he can't give me. I says, honesty is your best policy. If I would accept the first time, I'd live a lie for the rest of my life. So then he realized that I did the right thing. And he learned to love rolled cabbage and gefilte fish and chopped liver. They love it.
Well, when you first got to San Antonio, and you saw Mexican people, did they look very strange to you?
Very much.
They were still wearing the white pajama type thing.
We were afraid of them. You want to know how I met my husband?
I'm going to ask you that in a minute, but I want to know, first of all, a little bit more about your impressions of seeing San Antonio, what it was like. Was it large compared to Semyonich?
To compare to Semyonich, it was different because you couldn't speak Jewish. There was nobody that you could speak to. It was either Mexican or English. And it was very hard and very sad.
Where was the shul?
The shul was on Main Avenue. No, it wasn't on Main Avenue. We didn't even have a shul. We had a community that they were the real religious, like they daven every day. And for Kaddish or something, they had a little room somewhere by the river. And Yontef, they would rent a hall. And this was our shul. Then later, 51 years ago, they built the shul on Main Avenue. Didn't David show you where it was, the shul? It says, it's a medical, right across from Main Avenue in Quincy. When you go by, have him show you. This is a medical center now. That was the shul, the brand new shul.
Was that a good Asakam?
A good Asakam, that 51 years ago that we got a shul. And then, of course, they sold it and they moved away. But when Shabbos, you couldn't go because you didn't want to ride. I have a papa stayed in, he went to the store because you have to make a living. And that's all.
Why were you afraid of the Mexican people?
They talked so funny, and they dressed so funny. I mean, it was funny. You didn't, you hear people speak Spanish, and to me it was Greek or something. I have a papa at that time spoke Spanish. I wanted to learn how to sew, very bad. I never knew what to do with the machine. So I told my father, I says, I want, to begin with, when I came here, I says, I want to go to work. So my father says, nice Jewish girls don't work in San Antonio. It's only Mexicans and Goyim work here. But I did get a job for a little while. Then I says, I want to learn how to sew. Mama didn't know how. We didn't have a machine. So he says, I'll take you to the store. And the man, see, when you have, whether it's second-hand or new, you have to have an alteration mat. So in the back of the store, they had a machine, and a Mexican could do the alteration, trousers, sleeves. So he took me in, and Papa was sitting, he wouldn't leave me by myself. And the man showed me how to thread a needle, and so then I learned how to sew on a machine.
So, but the town, I still didn't get your answer whether the town was much larger than Semyonich, or
It was, yeah.
were you sort of,
Even being as small as San Antonio was those days, it was larger than Semyonich.
and the different kind of like the palm trees and things, did you think that that was very strange?
Absolutely.
Is there anything you can remember that particularly stuck in your mind that was so different? Any food that you may have seen?
Yes. Grapes.
Grapes?
Grapes and bananas and oranges. That you could have oranges. You don't have to be sick to have oranges.
Had you ever seen a banana before you came to this country?
No, tomatoes neither. I remember now my husband says where he comes from, he's from Russia, that they had tomatoes that they fed the animals. And they had watermelon growing in there. Or they were close to somewhere that they got it, but we didn't. If we got some kind of fruit like this, it was imported from Warsaw or Białystok or somewhere, from a big city.
What about things like lettuce? Did you ever have that in
No, never saw lettuce in our lives. Cabbage we had. We had cabbage, carrots, onions, potatoes, pears, apples, plums. Fruit we had the finest. But like oranges, grapefruits, these we didn't have. And we came in here and we saw everything. And ice cream, at those days we had special ice cream parlors that would come in, and the room was all mirrored. And the flavors was written on the walls on the mirror. And it was so impressive. And then we had a big, the Majestic Theater was on the corner of Houston and Main Avenue, where Star Furniture Company, you know where it is, don't you? So they made a parking through that you can go through on the floors. That was the Majestic, and in there, my brother was already in here, so he took me and Ellen. My sister was visiting, she was married there, to the Majestic. But when he came, they told him that they're sorry, he has to have a coat on. He came in a shirt. It was the theater. We didn't have theaters in Semyonich. Small little town. Where did your mother come from?
My mother?
Yeah, mother-in-law. She
Vilna.
comes from Russia.
Poland.
Oh, also Poland.
Was the Majestic have film or was it vaudeville?
Vaudeville. Oh, vaudeville. The Majestic didn't have. It was little. The two big theaters, the Aztec and the Texas, was built much later. They're not even 50 years old. Not even, must be about 40. We had little bit of theaters, movies. And of course it was silent movies. But the Majestic had every week or so, vaudeville would come.
Were the streets here cobblestone?
Cobblestone, all the streets.
And how did people get around other than streetcar? Did most people have a horse and cart? Or were there cars by then?
The cars. For my time, they had cars. But a family had a car. One car. And not every family.
What did you think when you saw the first car?
I was going to run after it.
Did you know what it was, really?
Oh, yeah, yes. You get used to good things.
Did some of these things, had you heard about them when you were in Poland? You'd never seen them, or
We saw, because one time I remember somebody came, must be some dignitary or the gent, of course, and they had a car, and everybody was running. It was like a fiesta in Semyatic. We wanted to see that car. Then another time, during the war, or after the war, I don't remember, a plane came in. And it was really, the whole city was running to see what it is. So I kind of,
Mm-hmm.
And another thing, I don't get, it's there. I mean, I don't go in ecstasies. It's,
Did San Antonio look like you thought America was going to look like? Or did you have this vision that the streets were really paved with gold?
well, no. I was too smart for that, I think. I mean, that's just people, I don't know, I think I can't express how I feel. I know that the streets are not paved with gold and you have to work for what you make. You don't get things on a silver platter. My husband came here, he'll tell you, and he struggled just like your father-in-law. Well, your father-in-law had it good because he had brothers.
Well, your first house you had electricity in it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You didn't have electricity in
No,
Smiljanich?
no.
What did you think about turning on a light?
That was a pleasure. And then we didn't have to carry the wood to the stove. It was a switch on. And of course we had time to teach Mama how to handle it. But she had a beautiful home.
Did you have any other kind of appliances? Like, did you have an iron? The old-fashioned iron that heated up?
At home?
Here in San Antonio?
No, here we had iron with a cord.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Papa had everything ready. He bought the house just like I walk out and they walked in. With crystal and, of course, the china we couldn't use, But everything was there. A little light, everything.
So you went to work for a couple months
Mm-hmm.
selling, and you didn't work in your father's store?
No, because
Why?
it was men's clothing.
What did the store look like?
A little second-hand store
Where was it?
on Commerce Street, where they are now.
And he sold all kinds of men's clothing?
All kind of men's shoes, trousers, shirts, underwear, jacket, whatever, just regular men's
Was
clothing.
most of the clientele Mexican?
Most Mexican. And they would have a man. They paid him special extra. He was less paid than another one. And he would pull in the customers. If you go by the sidewalk, they would say, come in, we have something. That was Commerce Street. When you had a store on Commerce Street, you were the lowest merchant in town.
Why?
Because it was nothing but Mexican. And now Commerce Street, I don't have to tell you.
Where were the rich Gentile people? Where did they shop?
We had Jaskis.
Oh, yeah?
We had Jaskis, we had Wolfenmarks. It was this big, but we had it.
But it was still downtown, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's no Loop 410.
No.
It wasn't way out here. It was all centered.
That was Wolfenmarks, the building. And then was Jaskis. And then was another little store. And then forced up and up. This big. And that's all.
Do you know about how many people were living in San Antonio when you first came?
I don't know. But it was, comparing to Semyatic, it was a big city.
Well, when the Mexicans who used to shop in your father's store, did most Mexicans at that time wear the white pajamas, or were they starting to change?
No, they changed already. Or the old-timey, like you wear the hair now. That's the way the women would go and down to the bottom, wear the long hair. And when I'd get a mate and wear her hair like this, I say put on a hairnet or you can work here. And I just start. But that's the way with them, the air, I'm sure your mother-in-law told you that. It showed that there. And restaurants, we had very few.
Did your mother allow you to eat in a restaurant? I mean, was
What do
she?
you mean she would allow me? Who went to a restaurant? Who had the money to go to a restaurant? After I got married, it was different. Mama, I don't believe Mama was ever in a restaurant. Oh, I take it back. We would go every day in San Antonio. You would, after lunch, you dress up in your finery and put on a hat and go downtown. What you did downtown, I don't know. I often think, what did I do in town? That was after I got married. So, and I had a car, and my mama never drove, you know. So she would call me in the morning, what you gonna do? Why don't you come to town? All right, Mama. So I'd pick her up and we would go to town. And we would go into Woolworths. Then Jaski's up in the fountain. And we'd sit down and she would order a cup of postum. I'd sink it. And they would give her a cup of water and a cup of, 2 cups. One, not in a teapot, but another cup. And she would drink the coffee, the postum. And I would have a cup of coffee. Sometimes I would have enchiladas. It all depends, you know. But we didn't have many restaurants. It was the Manhattan. I think that for 35 cents you had an 8-course dinner.
So when did you first meet your husband?
My husband, I spent the night with a friend of mine. And he was there.
What was her name?
Yeda Zelinsky. And I met him there.
What was he doing there?
A friend of ours roomed in that house, you know. So he came to call on him. Your mother-in-law knows him. Ben Nathan. Have you heard talk of him? So my husband and Ben were very good friends. So he came to pick him up and they were going somewhere. So the next day he calls me. We didn't have a telephone yet, because those days you couldn't get a telephone that easy. Papa gave in for the longest, and it took years before you got one. So a neighbor calls me in, and she says, Miss Penna, there is a telephone. Sounds a nice boy on the voice. Voice sounds very nice. So I answered the telephone, and he asked me for a date. I says, I cannot give him a date. I don't know him. I just met him. So I says, well, all right, very. So I call my father right from there, and he says, he's the best boy in San Antonio. Go with him. And so we went for 3 months. I met him in June, no more. I met him in June.
What year was that?
Met him in June and we got married in January. We married in 20 or 21, I have to look it up. And it took me for the date and he got stuck, he never left.
Where did you used to go on your dates?
To the ice cream parlor and to a sunken garden. Have you seen the sunken garden? That's all. And
Did he have a car?
He had a car. He was a good catch. He had a car. He had his own business. You know, he pedaled. And I think...
I noticed here on your announcement that it says that your name was Lillian.
Yeah.
How did you get that name?
Well, I'm telling you, my brother-in-law, instead of Leah, see, my name is Leah. That's my given name. And that's the way I went on, always Leah. But my brother-in-law came to visit us. And he decided he'll give us American names. But I never liked Lillian.
But why did your parents put that on the wedding announcement?
Because at that time I wasn't long in here and I didn't know. See,
Where were you married?
at home.
And where was that?
109
Omaha Street.
Omaha Street. That's the house I told you that when my husband bought it. I said, that's where we got married. He didn't remember.
And did a rabbi marry you?
Not a rabbi. What was he? Wait a minute. A reverend. Because my mother was at this wedding, this couple. He was the Jewish butcher in San Antonio, Lubel. And my mother in Europe went to their wedding. And when she came here, she had one landsman. And we bought the kosher meat for me. And Mama said that she wants him to, sort of like family, So he married us. He was a reverend.
And how many people were at the wedding?
A fistful.
A fistful?
My mama wanted to have a big wedding, but it was right after the flood. You heard we had a flood here.
When?
In 2020, I think, 21. We had a treacherous flood here. My father lost everything. The safe swam out from the stove. And so my mother wanted a big wedding. But I knew they didn't have the money. And what they had, they need. Because they lost everything a year or so ago. And my husband didn't have anybody. His mother had surgery that year. And she was, at that time, she was a very old lady. And I don't like big weddings to begin with. So I told my husband to tell Mama that either, when I tell her, she says, what I can't afford. Why can't I afford? I can't afford. I says, I just don't want a big wedding, Mama. So my husband told her, he says, look, nobody from my family is coming in, and I'll be all by myself. And I think that I'll feel better, so she wouldn't contradict him. And it just so happened that the day of our wedding, the doctor said that Mama has to go to the hospital. Mm. So we had just a few very
So your mother
close.
wasn't even there? Or
She
she
was
came
there.
to the wedding and then went to the hospital?
She was home. The wedding was at home. And she wouldn't go to the hospital until after the wedding.
Had she been ill before that?
Yes. And she had, in menopause, it was given birth. She had, we were 6. She had 9 children, plus several miscarriages. So, she wasn't well. And so she was bleeding. And the doctor says that she should go to the hospital and have a curetment. But she was afraid for the hospital and was afraid for surgery. She thought, it's, as a matter of fact, Papa had to go and talk to the doctor. She thought he talked. She says, go talk to the doctor. I don't want an operation. So you made her believe that he went, and the doctor says that he tests to be done. Go tell the doctor. I mean, it's not that he wants it. Anyhow, so it worked out that it was good that we didn't plan on a big wedding. So Mama came, they kind of dressed her up, and she came down to stay by the chuppah, and she went back to bed.
Did you have a wedding dress?
A suit. I had a wedding suit. The first one in San Antonio, Jewish girl that dared to marry in a suit and hat. I figure this way, if I don't have a big wedding, what do I want a wedding dress? I mean, if you have plenty of money, it's different. But I didn't want to spend my parents' money. They didn't have it. So my husband bought me the suit. He paid for the wedding outfit.
So after the wedding, did you go on a honeymoon?
We went for a honeymoon to
Where?
Austin for a couple days. We had a lovely apartment rented. Now it looks like a shack. But we paid $60 a month for an unfurnished apartment in those days. It was a lot of money. And we stayed there for about from January to July. Then we bought a little house. I got pregnant, and it was too much money to spend for an apartment, so we bought a little house. And the little house wasn't my dream house. I wanted a house with a fireplace and with bookcases. But my husband said that this house, if you want it, I'll buy it. But a house, it's $400 more. And I need it in the business. But if you want it, we'll get it. I says, no, I don't want it that bad. But he says, I promise you, the next house you'll have a fireplace.
And so when was your first child born?
We were married in January, and she was born in November, the 3rd of November.
And then that was Eleanor?
Yeah.
And that was 1922?
Yeah.
And
then Sonny was born in 1926.
Okay, well before we get on to your children, I want to hear about the flood a little bit. That was the big flood of, what, 1920?
1920. A lot of lives were lost, and people lost everything they had. You passed by Houston Street, and there were merchandise laying on the sidewalk, and there wasn't water to drink, because we were afraid of everything. There was no food. But in time, they straightened out, and that's it.
Well, did the river overflow? I mean, I didn't think you had that much rain in San Antonio.
No, it's not from it. San Antonio has that, and it still has. Have you ever passed by the dam, Holman's Dam? That's what it was built after that. You see, we built a dam because it was treacherous.
So your father's store was completely ruined?
Everything, he lost everything.
What did he do then?
It took time before they reestablished again. The merchandise that they saved, they washed it and cleaned it and just sold it for whatever they could get. And we almost lost Max because he insisted to go in and take things out of the safe. And when the safe went through the door, the water pushed him through the transom. You know what a transom is. So thank God that nobody was, hurt.
So it completely filled the store. It wasn't just 2 or 3 feet.
The whole
was all
store,
the way up.
all the way up. It was like, and I wasn't home. That was the night that I spent with my friends. 2 girls spent the night with her. Jasmine would spend the night. I had dinner there. I spent the night. And in our neighborhood, she didn't know. In the morning, the milk wasn't delivered. And she says, I wonder why it didn't deliver milk. And she asked the neighbors and something, and then they tell us that it was a flood, and the all communication is cut off. The schools are closed and everything else.
So did your father reopen a store on Commerce Street again?
Same store. His store was, you've been on West Commerce. Well, the river goes through there. Well, his store was right in the river. Right in the river. Now they are in this side of the street. You saw Pennas. So, but they were right across the street and in the river. everybody. There was a lot of losses, like I say, lives and money and everything. Then they reopened, and the boys got older, and they said they don't want to be in second hand, and they took in new merchandise. And then they tried on Houston Street, and they made it a big success. But they opened a store on Houston Street. My father said, that's the end. They're going to lose every penny I ever made, because he wasn't used to, you know. So this is it.
So after your children were born, and your mother lived nearby, and you were very close to your mother?
Oh, very close, yes.
And you said she used to call you and ask you what you were doing, and you'd go downtown?
We'd have dinner there every Friday night. Every Friday night. Because my older sister doesn't live here. She's in Kansas City. And that was the only grandchild, was Ellen. And we had our dinner every Friday night and stay there. And then Papa wouldn't go to store on Saturdays. After the boys got older, he and Mama would go to shul. By that time, the shul was built on Quincy and Main. And they insist I should have lunch with them, Eleanor and me. So Saturday morning, to get that. What?
So you spent the day and Saturday
We
with
spent the day
your
at
mother and-
my mama's, yes.
And did you have as many celebrations for the Jewish holidays here the way you had in Semyonich?
Oh, yes.
Family?
Every holiday we would be with Mama, the whole family. As a matter of fact, I still do it. Yesterday, the whole family was together. And Passover, we go to a hotel. Because we are a big family. I have a sister. She and her children and our family are 12 people. And then I have 2 brothers. So we always Passover, we go to a hotel, and it's kosher food.
Where is that hotel?
We used to go to the Manga.
Oh, here in
We
San
bring a
Antonio.
fish and matzah balls and matzah, and we tell them that what they cook, no flour and no butter, just plain chicken soup. Don't season with anything. And they knew it. And last year we went to the Al Tropicana. There's a Jewish man that owns, operates the hotel. Every Passover we are together, the whole family. And Rosh Hashanah I have just my immediate. So I have a meal.
Well, when your mother was still living, did you go to your mother's
Always
house?
at Mama's. But she's dead 27 years. So the family wasn't that big.
And when did your father die?
My father died 41 years ago. He was young.
Oh, so he died long before your mother.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He was only 60-some years old when he died. But when he made it after then, it was a God's send. Because, we'd having all this kind of sickness. Bright's disease and asthma.
So after you had 2 children, they started school here, and what was your daily life like? I mean, were you ever active in any of the Jewish organizations?
I worked with the Mothers Club. I worked with the Hadassah. I worked with the, we used to call it the auxiliary, what do you call it? What do you call the women's? The shul.
Sisterhood?
Sisterhood. We used to call it the Ladies Auxiliary. I worked with everyone. I was on the visiting committee. I took part in everything.
How did San Antonio change during those years?
A great deal. A great deal. Our sisterhood was a handful. And the Hadassah was just a few women. And now, it's well known all over.
When did most of the Jewish population come to San Antonio? About what year?
It really, I think, really started between before the Second World War, but after it really, when it started to grow, after the Second World War, people come and they remain there. We have more now. One time I went to a meeting when I drove. They had a luncheon and I went. In front of me was sitting some ladies. I says, "You're a newcomer, CEO. What is your name?" "I'm Leah Lifshutz." She says, "Newcomers? I'm here 3 years." And I felt so bad. I says, "Oh." I says, "Well, welcome to San Antonio. Glad to have you." But people come and they remain here. Something about us that they like us here.
Well, when your children were growing up, is there anything that was different than from when Sam or Ellen was small? Can you think of anything that was great? Was Brackenridge Park built?
Oh, yeah. Brackenridge Park was here before we were.
It was.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, with all the playground?
Oh, not that much.
Did
just...
you used to take the children to the playground?
They had donkey rides. So every Sunday morning, my husband would take the children on a donkey ride. And he would hold on to the child, and it was a ritual, to take him there. And then we would take him to New Braunfels to swim.
To swim?
Yeah. Because here it was just a few parks, swimming pools, and with all the Mexicans, they didn't dare come in, but they would throw rocks.
Mm.
So we would go to New Braunfels. There was exclusive, you couldn't get in there without no Mexican. The poor Mexicans couldn't even get near. Thanks to Gonzalez, he is responsible for all the Mexicans to get what they got, which it's a pleasure to see him. Did you see the little girl that works for me? For 3 weeks, she was gone. I have been sick, and I can't do much. I don't go down by myself. So I called. "I'm going to the doctor. I'll be there tomorrow." I couldn't replace her because she'll be there tomorrow, she'll be Monday, So finally, and then they're so tricky, you saw when she left, she gets $9 for the few hours. When they call you, please tell them that I make $10 a week. She gets $9 a day. Why? Well, because I wouldn't get stamps. All right. A couple of weeks ago, I was in bed. I had bronchial. And it's no fun to be by yourself for 8 hours. So, and the children get worried. They keep on calling, "What are you doing? Are you sure you're all right? You need something?" "No, nothing. So finally her mother calls me. "Miss Lifshutz, this is Lena's mama. She was born here. Or mama was born here. She went to school here." I says, "Where is Lena?" "She's going to the hospital." I says, "What's the matter with her?" So I don't know why I said it. I says, "Is she pregnant?" She says, "Yes." Finally, she came to work Wednesday. I says, "Lena, are you pregnant?" Then I looked at the door and she's filled out. I says, "Where's your husband?" She says, "No, when were you married?" She says, "I got married in December, last December." "Didn't you know that you were pregnant?" "No." "When did you find out?" When my baby. And she felt the child. I says, weren't you sick or anything? No. Where's your husband? I haven't seen him. He left me. Did you tell him that you're pregnant? No. Aren't you going to tell him? I don't know where to get it. Today she says, oh, Miss Lifshutz, my sister got my husband's telephone address. I'm going to write to you. I says, you mean he didn't send you nothing, a letter or money or anything? We are divorced. So that's what we lived in here. And she was born and raised here and went to school in here. So we kind of, kept away from them. But they are very intelligent people. I mean, some of them. So we used to go to New Braunfels every Sunday. And then if we would skip, there was Terrell Wells.
A what?
Terrell Wells. That was the section that they called it. And it had sulfur water. And people that they had rheumatism, arthritis, whatever, people believe in that they'll get cured. So there was special beds for people, but it was a pool outside. And every Sunday we would take the children, pick up a lunch, and spend the day with them there. And that was the way we did.
Well, do you remember going to the root beer shop with the children?
Yeah, sure.
Why don't you
They
tell me
still
about
have
that?
one. They still have one. And give them a little glass. The baby would get a little glass for nothing. Who told you, Sonny? They'd get a little glass for nothing. Every night we would take him out if my husband wasn't too tired. Because at night I never liked to go by myself. We would stop and they would get root beer. And you didn't even have to pay for the little glass. And then they would sneak the little glass home with him. It was the biggest thrill. I'll tell you something about my son. My father was very religious, as I told you. So Sunday, they didn't have a car. We were the only ones that had a car. So Sunday we would take Mama and Papa for a ride. And there was one place that everybody would go, the North Loop. So we took him for a ride and passed by, and people come out from church. So Sonny sees so many people walk out, and he says, what's that? Before anybody had a chance to tell him, my father tells him, this is a garage. So for years, now when we pass by and we see people come out from church, my husband said, this is a garage. And it couldn't bring to say a church, because he was very religious, He was a learned man. And then one time, one thing else about my son, what was it? Something he, also in religious things, he asked something.
What was some of I understand he had some accidents when he was a child. Was something about the ice truck?
Don't bring these memories up. It wasn't the ice truck, it was a milk truck. He was sitting on the curb, and a milk wagon delivered milk. So he had to stick out his feet, and the wheel went over his... If it'd be a car wheel, it'd be gone, crippled. He is stitched up. He is full of stitches. One time, I dressed him up. It was Thursday, the mate's day off. I says, he would tell me, Mama, what do you want a mate? I says, why? Oh, Mama, I'll bring you in the garbage can. I'll bring you the potatoes. I'll do everything. Because if I didn't have a maid, I wouldn't leave him home. See, he wasn't of school age yet. So one time, I says, all right, Sonny. I bathed him, And I dressed him, and I said, sit down on the swing. I'm going to get dressed, and we'll go into town. All right, Mama. I'm dressing. I'm dressed already, and I'm getting the finishing touches on it. And somebody rings the bell. Who is it? And a man answers. I come to the door. A black man, all sunny. I says, and he's bleeding. I says, what's the matter? What happened? He went across the street, and the swing fell. And he was the first one. And he cut himself in his leg. He was just bleeding I've never seen. I rushed to the hospital, to the St. Rosa emergency. I was there a friggin' visitor in the emergency ward. And they stitched him up. And one time he was taking a bed. I gave him a bed. And I said, Sonny, don't move. Stay right there. He wasn't of age well not to trust him. I forgot a towel or something. I said, stay here, please. Just don't go. You'll get the floor wet. All right, Mama. So I come in. The top is full of blood. He cut himself. How you did it? The top wasn't sharp. You know, but he managed. That was another time. God got this, I don't know, he's got a mark here, you can see. He's got stitches in here. He never missed anything, nothing passed him up. He had poison ivy every year. Summer came, I knew I'm going to have poison ivy for years. And the poor thing suffered because there was no air conditioning. We didn't even have a fan. And the pulse was running. And there's nothing that you could do for him, just put on something. So one time I told my husband, I says, look, honey, when you come home, please stop and bring a fan, any kind of fan. So he bought me a little fan for $1.10. And I had it right by his bed so you could cool him. One time I bought cherries. I'm very fond of cherries myself. And in those days, it was 99 cents a pound. See, we don't get things like this. That goes only your way. And he ate, and he ate. And I said, Sonny, you're eating too much. You'll have some tomorrow. Oh, Mama, it's so good. Now, how can you? That night, he woke us up. He was crying. He woke us up. And I come in the room. I've never seen anything like it in my life. It was swollen from head to toe. His testicles was this big. And my husband's so dead. I get chills now. And it was Saturday night. I called the doctor, not the pediatrician or the doctor, but I called the skin doctor because I lived with the skin doctors. I says, Doctor Lehman, I told him what. I says, he's all swollen. Can you come out? He says, what can I do there? Bring him out, I'll meet you in the office. So Sunday, early in the morning, we took him to the medical arts building. And it wasn't the skin, it was that he ate something, you know, but he took care of it. There was no place that he passed up that he shouldn't get in trouble. He was a character.
Did you have those kind of problems with Eleanor?
No. A girl is different. Girls are different.
How come, who made the decision for him to go to Texas Military Institute?
He.
How old was he when he decided to do that?
11.
What
He
did
graduated when he was 15.
What did he say?
He wanted to go to that school. And when he said something, his daddy, it's the law. And we lived Well, your mother-in-law used to live in that neighborhood. Well, she lived on Gramercy. Did you know there by then? But you know where she lived. We lived in 2100 block. And military is ideal. And my husband had to go to business. So who would take him? Me. And I was so tired because Jefferson was right down the street. But you don't like military. Why do you want? I like the school. I told you never made more higher than private. Because he had to be valedictorian, they gave him another stripe and we had to sew it on real in a hurry. He liked the school and I had to drive twice a day.
How did he know about the school, though, if he was only 11?
From the boys. They find out. You'd be surprised how children find out it wasn't my idea. I says, but why? Well, because I like it. And then later on, when he got older, he says, I'll take the car. You don't have to take me, Mama.
Did he do that?
No, I wouldn't give him my car. My car, I never let him drive. Because the only time I gave him my Buick to drive was when he was the senior prom. I says, then you can drive my car. Then I'll give you the car. I mean, because he wanted to drive my car. But that was his choice. But he had signed up, he sent off to Texas, and he had the room, everything under control. But I says, my God, you got a scholarship. Why don't you try and go to a school? At that time, Texas wasn't much. Texas wasn't rated like it's now. Excuse me. And I said, why don't you try and get in a school with a higher rating? So sure enough, he sent off to several, and he was accepted everywhere. So he landed in there, in Wharton. But that wasn't my idea, the military school. He wanted it. I got news for you. Is that on?
Say whatever you want. It's okay.
Oh, you're going to mark it off?
Mm-mm.
No, I don't want to say it. There's something to do with, But it was my idea.
Well, were there many Jewish boys at Texas military?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there were?
Yeah. Well, mostly when you can afford, you want your children to give them the best. And it was a private school, and it was a good school. And he was very good in school. But the other ones, the fathers took the children. And with me, I had to drive. Crossing, it's across town.
Was Eleanor going to Jefferson?
Yeah, she walked. I didn't even have to take her because it was just a few blocks down the street. And him, I had to take him twice a day. And from there, I had to take him to Cheder. And then come pick him up from Cheder. So I was really in the driving business.
But you were happy that he wanted to continue his education at Wharton. I mean, you felt that education was important for him?
Oh, of course I felt education. Listen, that's something that you can't buy. And then, of course, you went to Harvard. But, and when he was bar mitzvah, every Saturday, he would come home and say, I don't want to be bar mitzvah. Why? So I find out that the boy didn't get enough presents, so he didn't want to be bar mitzvah. The next Saturday he'd come home, I'm going to be bar mitzvah. Because it was payable. And I never said, it's one thing he can tell you, I never said, like some mothers, you've got to do it. You don't want it? All right, so you wouldn't be bar mitzvah. It's all right with me if you don't want it. Then he went off to, first year he went to camp, he went to the Y and get a letter. Bring me water. I can't drink the water. And bring me watermelon. Everybody has watermelon and I don't. The parents brought out watermelon. So before we finished that letter, there was another one in the afternoon. Years ago, they would deliver twice a day. I've got the poison ivy. And he said poison ivy, so picked up Monday, and Monday's not visiting day. Used to be Sunday. Now I understand they don't have visiting day at all. So we came out, and when I saw him, I almost died. He was covered with, forgot what you call it, some medication.
Calamine lotion?
Yeah. And he looked a mess. Actually a mess. But when we brought him the watermelon, and we brought him a jug of water, I said, Sonny, you want to come on? No, I'm not going to quit. Because, then he's a quitter. So we left him. It was only for 2 weeks. And he stayed out another week. And then after that, he picked himself better camps, more expensive. He knew how to pick all the time. So he went to camp till he stopped. Every summer he would go to camp. And he made a lot of friends there. He's a good boy.
Was he very close to your mother?
Very.
Excuse me. Grandchild?
My parents were very close to him. They loved him. See, he was very smart. And when he was 6 years old, my father died. And that Friday, a few weeks before, he went with Papa to Shul Friday night. And Sonny conducted the services. See, the teacher wanted him to get confidence. And my father was so proud of him. Now I'll tell you what happened with him. One Saturday, we were at Mama's. We had lunch. And we're sitting on the porch and rock. He goes inside. And he comes out. And he says, I'm hungry. So my mama always said, it was always in the fridge, there a piece of fruit. And Friday she would bake all kind of cake. I said, well, what do you want? I don't know, I don't want these. I said, well, Bubby has cake. And she had, no, I don't want it. And he starts to, yeah. I didn't say anything. Not one word. And that's all. On the way home, I says, we are not coming to Bubby's on Saturdays anymore. Why? Because you hurt Bubby. You insulted her, you insulted me, and I feel very bad about it. Remember, next Saturday, we are staying right here. He thought I'll forget. He didn't say anything. Next Saturday, he dresses and he gets ready. I'm with, Mama, aren't you ready? I says, for what? We're going to Bubby's. I says, no, we're not. Why? I says, you hurt Bubby's feelings. And we are not going there anymore. Because you didn't think that she has food good enough for you. I promise. So, I wanted to go. I says, all right, I'll give you a second chance. So we come there, we sit down, we eat, and everything is fine. Didn't take 5 minutes after we finished eating, he comes out with a piece of mildewed bread. They find the Mama's bread box. See, Mama, I'm hungry and I eat this bread. My mama almost got, she says, oi, oi. I said, Lozzie, just leave him. And that's where he was. See, I said, you're not going. I don't know, I'm not a college, but I had my ways of, some mother would beat him up. What do you mean you're not? I said, I think, my mama says, what are you rushing on? I said, he says he's hungry. I'll take him home and he'll eat. Not one word, but once I got him in the car, I told him, gave him my peace. You're not coming down anymore. He was very smart.
Was your mother still alive when he went to Harvard?
Oh, yeah. One thing he didn't make. We didn't make. It was very sad. Those days you wore ads. And he graduated, and we had the invitation. And I said, I'm not going to tell him, but we'll surprise him. So I went and I bought, I can see the hair, I never wore it. I can see the hair, the horse braid. And a dress, special clothes. And we were packed. And we were leaving in the morning. In the middle of the night, I get a call that Mama is gone. I never wore the dress. I never wore the hat. I just couldn't look at it. It was in the closet for the longest until I gave it away. And 2 days later, he came home. And when we picked him up at the airport, just after the funeral, he came home, a day later. And he says, Mama, that's one thing I can't forget, that you didn't come to my graduation. I said, Sonny, we were ready to come. And before I had a chance to put it in a different way, my husband tells him, Bubby died. The day of your graduation was a funeral. Well, he cried. That when I think, it's just, because she loved him. And he loved her. They were so, you said if he's the first grandchild, no. I have an older sister, and she has children, but she didn't live here, you see. So my children were their life and everything. And, but he went to he gave me a lot of trouble. Oh, did he give me trouble. There was no dull moment. There was no dull moment. He would, to begin with, when he got older, he would come home, and I would find on the Frigidaire, in the morning a note. In the car, one of the boys is asleep. Don't worry. He would be so many, we had a 2-story house, that you didn't have enough room to put him. So they would stay in the car. When he was in Wharton, and everything was rationed here, during the war, not for your time, I get a letter. Those days you didn't pick up the receiver. And he says, Mama, I like to have 4 or 6 boys for enchiladas. Cheese was rationed, and we were 2, because the children were away, so we got just 2 little rations. I didn't write to him to tell him no, because if you wrote, it's going to be, so it's no use to tell him. I went mooching. I asked my mama, I asked my brother, I asked my sister, I asked my neighbor. And I said, I'll pay you up. They knew I was going to. And I got enough cheese. And I made them enchiladas. And many times I'm in the mall and somebody said, Miss Lifshutz, Miss Lifshutz. Turn on. One of the boys. Oh, your enchiladas, I can't forget them. I said, I forgot them. I don't know how to make them anymore myself. But he's a good boy. He made a few mistakes, but he's a good boy.
What happened in San Antonio during the Depression? Were you greatly affected by it?
Didn't heed us at all.
Why?
I had my telephone. I had a maid for $2 a week, but I had maid. Because we live wisely. It didn't affect your in-laws neither. You see, if, like I said, when I told him I like a house with a fireplace, and I would insist, he would get it. That would be living out your means, because that means it takes the money from the business. And when you borrow money, you have to pay interest. But I come from a family where we know that we don't only live today, we want to live tomorrow. We weren't affected at all. The neighbors, I had a Jewish neighbor, and she would come in, do you have a potato? And Sammy he hasn't had an orange in a couple days. And our telephone was disconnected. I says, here's an orange, and there is potatoes. And I never lived above. So the depression didn't affect us at all.
Didn't the banks close here and people lose money in the banks? No?
It just so happened that not the bank that my husband was dealing, and then most of the money that he had was an investment. You see, in small business you can't have money in the bank. It was invested. It buy a little. In the contrary, at that time we bought more because people they had to sell it. They needed money for bread, but it didn't affect us. A lot of times we talk, and we say, remember that people, they were affected, they lost everything. Us, it didn't affect at all.
What about World War II, other than the rationing? Do you remember anything particular that
Nothing.
How life changed?
No. That Sonny went to school. Eleanor was in school. Nothing. Didn't bother us. It didn't affect us at all.
Have you traveled a lot since your marriage?
A lot of time.
Have you gone to Israel?
Been in Israel twice. In Israel, I've been in Paris, all through Italy, England, and in the States. We traveled an awful lot.
Was your mother alive when you took any of these trips?
No.
No.
It would be too young, you see,
Well, she died, 1947?
27 years ago. Eleanor's boy was just born. He was an infant. She lived to see. She wanted a great-grandchild. And I remember I brought the child and put it on our bed, and she petted it, and she was already, and that night she passed away. But it didn't affect us at all. Like I say, during the Depression and during the war, my husband made money. He bought that people had to sell, And
did your mother ever have any feelings about Israel being established? I mean, it was before Israel was, but did she ever talk about?
No.
Did anyone in your family ever go to Palestine?
No. My mama told us that she had an aunt that went to Israel to die. That's what they usually, But they never heard from her. And when we were in Israel in 51, we started to travel in 51. And I put an ad in the paper. And I says, is there anybody from Semyatic? I told him my name and my maiden name and where I come from and everything, and nobody answered. I took a chance, some could have come, but nobody answered. So evidently nobody came there. My mother lost a lot in our family during the Second World War.
I was just going to ask you, did anybody else come over?
No.
As a result of Hitler?
No.
Nobody else came to San Antonio?
Nobody was safe. Mama had one sister in Warsaw, and she had two sisters in Semyatic. We never heard from them. Our brothers immigrated here before. But she had 3 sisters, and we never heard from them. I mean, I sent them, when I got married, Mama had one sister that lived in Warsaw, the baby, and her I knew real something, I remember her. And I used to send her every month. Plus what Mama sent, I used to send her a few dollars, and never heard from them.
Was there anything else you can think of that you might like to add?
No. I'm thinking. That's about all, I think.
Okay,
What else can I have?
I guess that's it. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
This completes Volume 2, Side 2 of the interview with Leah Penner Lifshutz of San Antonio, Texas. The interview took place on November 23, 1973, in Mrs. Lifshutz's apartment. The interviewer was Ellen Robinson Epstein of the Center for Oral History in Washington, D.C.